Nugget.
Nuggets with Sharon and Johnny.
Johnny, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So, like, all this is happening in the world day to day. Like, what are you seeing and hearing and like feeling?
Yeah. It's so exciting. It was interesting because I have this artist residency I'm doing in rural Southwest Minnesota. And they had sort of taken a racial equity statement from their national organization that called these
Uh
dark
huh.
days, and they were sort of conflating COVID with the civil uprising. And I was like, this is not a dark day for racial justice. This is a bright, beautiful day where it is
Uh
becoming
huh.
mainstream that we need to deal with not just violence, state violence against Black people, but also undo racism's effects on how we understand and organize ourselves. So, for me, it
Hmm.
feels really exciting that it's becoming a mainstream thing. And I know that there's going to be a tendency to get distracted, but I'm going to grab this trend to set in the long term transformation we need, or just tie it to the long term transformation that has been afoot, right? So,
Yeah.
and I live
Yeah.
in super white community in Iowa, which is very white as well. And last Tuesday, we gathered here in front of our little Quaker church. We're going to do every Tuesday until we're satisfied with the transformation. We're going to gather at the Peace Bowl. We're going to kneel for 8 minutes and 46 seconds and reflect on all the lives that are lost. We're going to
Uh
share what learnings we feel called to organize to bring ourselves to, and then what
huh.
actions we feel called to do, and everything, and moving from the inside out. So what do we need to do in transformation of our personal lives? What do we need to do in our community,
Yes.
our organizations? Yeah, so it's exciting, and I love it because everyone's saying I'm not sure what to do, and I'm like, well, let's figure it out. That's going to be the beauty of it.
Well, do you think? Okay, so okay. Do you? First of all, do you know that you, Johnny, beautiful white man, are in the minority? You do know that, right?
What do you mean?
You
How
do.
so?
I don't think you're like very like, let's do this. I'm excited. There's a lot of white people in the world who are like
Yeah.
not like that, who are just like, uh, see, I'm just gonna go. I'm have fun there. I have fun with that.
Yeah.
Cool, it's great. Bye.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I feel like you're very like, how did you get that way? Like, how did
Mhm.
you get to the point where you're just like, yeah, I know I'm white and I'm gonna like get together and
Yeah.
fix this. Like we're
Yeah.
so like, yeah.
What's
Can
funny,
you can
I feel like I'm gonna be the one. I'm walking out the door with them and like, hold on, let's just take a moment and just chat for a minute. I got just an idea for you, and
right?
I'm gonna keep them from walking out that door. That's what I feel called to do, and I'm super excited, and hopefully not in a creepy way. So that's always what I have to be careful. Always got to be to the creepy.
Are you like the
I mean,
like
I
are
think,
you creepy anti-racist? Like
yeah.
you're doing creepy anti-racism? You're just like,
Creepy.
come
Creepy
here.
around. Come here, come. Well, I
Like,
mean, I think, it is, I do have like a salesperson vibe to me. Like, I am very good at sort of selling people and stuff. And I always have been very aware of that power and always wanted to make sure I was putting it towards something good, something that reflected my values and what I want for the. And so I've never really applied it to selling things, but
yeah.
really applied it to selling ways of being. And so growing up as a
Yes.
minister's kid in a Southern Baptist upbringing, I used it to save people's souls for Christ using my big headed church puppets. And then I went to social work school. My break from the church was actually doing missions work in Cass Corridor in Detroit, and sitting across the table from this Black woman who was a grandmother in the housing projects, raising her grandkids, not sure how she was going to be feeding them every day. And her understanding and love of God was millennia beyond where I was. And there I was as a
Uh-huh.
like 21-year-old white dude. They gave me a car. I was living out in the suburbs in a real nice house. I had all my meals taken care of. And there was something about that, like, meritocracy sort of thing that was like, wait a minute, something doesn't seem right here. And so I went to Seattle and went
Huh.
to social work school to find out how secular people did missions work. And that was the great unraveling. I ended up trading Jesus for justice. And have and now and now in my Quaker church have figured out how to bring Jesus into justice. I
Well,
just needed to join.
the Quakers know what's up. So
Yeah,
like you found yourself a group. Like the Quakers always just like,
yeah,
let's
yeah,
get it going.
yeah,
This is a problem. Let's go. Let's yeah.
yeah,
The Quakers
yeah.
know what's up.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, they were abolitionists from the beginning. They had women ministers from the beginning and had equal like equality for women and men. They had the first humane treatment for mental health where they wouldn't do the shock therapy and like had the one thing though that they do have a dark history or a dark piece of dark I shouldn't say that they a piece of their history that we need to do some restoration is there's Quaker boarding schools across the country, and they were used to culturally colonize indigenous folks. And so
Hmm.
that's some restoration that I think the Quakers need to undergo.
I also am excited about white people and their awakening. There is a what took you so long about it, but I'm a late bloomer. And so I feel like I have like a certain sympathy for white folks who are just now coming around because I took a while to come around with myself as well. I am in this space where I have some extreme mercy and I just want to help. I feel like white people I feel when I see since I'm black, I feel like I've dealt with all this my whole life. And some white people, unlike you, Johnny, are just now like, oh no, I'm white. What shall I do? And I'm like, no, 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 no. Come
Yeah,
back, come back.
yeah, come back, come back. You
Like,
don't have to melt. You don't have to melt.
I feel like some people are just like, how do you? Some people are just like, so you deal with like this every day. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. Every day I feel like this. Every day I feel like this. Yes. Like it's for real. I feel like a lot of white people are just now beginning to understand how that feels and are awakened. And I think, what is the science? I don't know the science. People are saying part of it is because of COVID-19 and that people are stuck inside and that everything had to slow down in order for people to really notice. As a black person, for me, this feels different because like I don't want my neck to be kneeled on
Yeah,
at all. Like that image is like the Emmett Till image. Like I'm just like it like I can't ever unsee that. And that feels particularly scary for me. And I think but I also just feel this like extreme mercy. I just want to help white people figure out how they live as white people in the world. And that it's not, I think, I don't know what it's like to be white, Johnny. But I think that, like, I would imagine that for me, the first place I would go is guilt and shut down. And I'm just like, no, 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 we're not going to do that. It's not your fault that you're white. And like, you're not going to retroactively go back to like your great, 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 great granddad, Thomas Jefferson,
yeah,
and like fix it. Like you can't do that. That's like not how time works. So like what can we do now? And like how can you really do the internal work that you need to do? And you said something before about like personal work and like that is like my shit. That's where I this is why I said yes to this because I think you don't know this because you're a Quaker and because you are a social worker and because you've done a lot of work. But like Johnny, a lot of white people do not do that work. I don't think you'd know that. Maybe it's because you're in Iowa and all the white Iowan people I've met have been particularly wonderful to me. Um, I've said this on mic several times in Iowa City. Like, you fucking Iowa people are so like down to clown, and you're just like with it in a way that a lot of white people aren't. Because I mean, you live in a city, you live in a cultural hub. Like I, it's a lot of white people are desperately lost,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I feel for them because I'm just like, well, I'm an expert on talking about race because I'm black.
Yep.
So come on.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I'm feeling really wonderful.
Yeah.
But that isn't to say I'm not also feeling like angry and sad. I'm just not surprised
Yeah.
um, by like what
What it is.
white people do or are capable of, or like the hatred. I'm not surprised. I just know, and I think that a lot of people are shocked about it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
welcome to internalized racism.
Yeah.
Welcome to
Yes. Yeah.
internalized racism. Welcome to internalized
Yeah.
racism.
Could that be the opening song as we do the animated journey inside oneself to look at all of the seeds of internalized
Yeah.
racism?
Internalized racism. Welcome to yes, 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 yes. Welcome to
Then we go
internalized.
inside. You go
Thank you.
travel inside to look. Yes, yes.
Oh my
I think we've got our new animated series
God.
coming up. I know that white people have not done this work, which is why I ended up placing myself here in the middle of the country in a purple county in a purple state. So I'm actually
Wow.
between blue. So we have blue Iowa City, super, super blue. And then we've got red, on the other side of the county. And we're sort of in this purple, county in this purple state. And I brought myself here because there are wonderful, loving people that have wonderful intentions and haven't had the chance to understand their work and their role and the integration of working toward justice as they do their own personal journeys. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to place myself in this place to be able to bring more folks along. And
Yeah.
I don't think that I feel like where we have privilege, we need to have patience. A lot of times
Yeah.
we think we get woke and then we don't want to deal with our own people or the people that are unwoke like we were. And so we leave them behind. And then who has to deal with it? You have to deal with it, right? People who are oppressed have to deal with it. Well, I'm like, I can't even talk. I can't talk to that person anymore, right? No, like
Spicy
that
right
is
now?
your
He's
job.
spicy. Ooh.
We have to do our internal work, and then we have to work with our people, right? That's moving from the inside out. And so we can't walk away from our people. We need to do our work and then do our work with our people so that other people don't have to deal with our shit and our people shit. You said that performance that you gave at Witching Hour last fall with Nina
Yes.
Simone and the piano and your story and that parallel was probably my favorite artistic experience last year. Nina Simone means so much to me. And you and a piano is my favorite thing, right? A singer and a piano and someone who can just pound those bass notes. Ooh! Wow. We won't get too much
Oh,
into it. Yes. So, but you said at some point, you said white people deal with your shit because we're having to deal with it if you're not.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
loved that calling. And I was curious if you would say, more about like, what is it that you experience that you don't want to have to experience anymore? What would you love that internal work to look like or the effects of that internal work?
This is no, that's a good question. This is what I want. I don't like, sure. Would it be great if racism was gone? Of course.
Amen.
Would it be great? But like, it's a behemoth. It's a giant. But what I really want, and this is for like everything. This is for like racism, homophobia, politics, religion. I want white people, especially white people, because white people would be pretending like they know everything all the time. I want white people to learn to say, "I don't know.
Mm,
Can you tell me?"
mm, yeah, yeah,
Like, I wish white people, because I think that there's this, like, when you're white, there's this impression that you, since you're the default, you never really have to do any questioning
yeah.
about, I guess, like, this is what it looks like. And so, like, when you are, and it's not, we're talking about racism right now, or race specifically, but I think it's the same thing with like queer folks, or like like people of different abilities. Like, when you are different from like the main in some way, you have to do some questioning. And a lot of white people don't do any questioning when it comes to race because they don't have to.
Yeah.
So the assumption is that they know the answer. So it's like, instead of listening to a black
Mm.
person saying, like, hey, when I see a cop, I feel scared. A white person is just like, well, why? No, you don't.
Yeah,
I never had that interaction.
yeah,
I never. I've had positive. And it's just like, well, what if what if imagine a world where maybe your experience was like not the only experience.
what? What?
And I feel like that would be huge in
Yeah.
beginning to break down
Mm,
these
mm,
systems, because like I feel like I don't want to oversimplify.
mhm,
Please, like everyone out there listening, like, it's not, I'm not oversimplifying. However, I do feel, Johnny, like just a lot of what has happened, like colonialism and like and racism, and slavery and all these big systems, and like um that have been, and the systems subsequently that have been built off of those systems, are kind of have this like idea that like white people know best,
mhm,
and that white people are the experts in the room.
yeah,
And it's just like, well, when you went to colonialize this area, like, did you ask the people how they felt
yeah, 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 right,
about getting their culture rewritten?
yeah,
Did you
yeah,
ask them? Did you like maybe try to like learn their language, or like
yeah,
meet halfway? No, white people are just like, nah, we good.
yeah, 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 and they make up their own
Welcome.
rules.
West
Yeah,
Africa. Like, it's
yeah,
just, it's I
yeah,
just want, that's what I want. You
yeah,
ask me what I want. I
yeah,
want white people to learn to say, I don't know. Can you help me? I
yeah,
don't know. Can you teach me?
yeah, yeah,
Just this like
that's
interfacing of
yeah,
humility would be so huge. I want to ask you a question,
okay.
one of these questions, because
Oh, yeah.
we've touched on it a little bit. It says, can you talk about art as service, activism as teaching? What role can art play in anti-racism work?
Mhm.
Tell me about tell me, we've talked a little bit about my art. Can we talk about what you do with your life and your art,
Yeah, yeah.
Johnny?
Yes. Yes, yes. In fact, I published an open letter to Iowa creatives today on the Iowa Arts Council page, calling forth anyone's artistic endeavors toward this moment of justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. What do you have going on that you can toss into the mix here, right? Because I believe that art possesses a power to do something nothing else can do. And
Ed.
Yes, and what I said is I'm committing this potion show project that I've been working on to this moment of Jedi transformation, justice, equity, diversity,
Uh-huh.
and inclusion. So we've been the last couple of years out here in Southeast Iowa. We've been asking that question: what can arts and entertainment bring to Jedi work? And
Hmm.
so we started out by doing some design sessions 2 summers ago. Then last summer, we did a little proof of concept and built a little show in 3 days. And what emerged is this
Uh-huh.
potion show. And so I'm going to travel
Oh,
around
oh,
the
oh,
Midwest.
about this.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to travel around the Midwest the next few years, engaging people in potion making and then turning their potions into show ready pieces and then traveling that around and sharing. And so the recipe, Uncle Jojo's potion making recipe is tell a significant story in your life, name the power or powers in that story, and then create a sensory experience to unleash that power in you or the world around you. And so it's perfect for doing this kind of Jedi work of like, you have powers in you, right? And your power is your story. So know your story, work through that, and then shut up and listen to other people's. And then let's make things together that can share those with other folks as well. So we start realizing we don't know anything except for our stories. So let's share our stories and bring those powers together. So it's like storytelling, power sharing, and art making, all for Jedi transformation.
I'm shook. That is so brilliant because it's a really good way to get other because I it's what we're talking about. It's the fact
Right.
that like there's other people's stories that you don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that humility. I mean, I think the thing that
Yeah.
one of the things I've come to is the only thing we actually share with everybody else in this world is that we're completely different from everyone else. And that
Uh-huh.
scares the shit out of us. We want so
Yeah.
badly to be like other people that we
Right,
cling to
right,
the categories that exist. And those categories in our society come with hierarchy
right.
that stratifies who's more worth and who's more most valuable. We can get rid of that. We can appreciate the connections we have with other people who share certain experiences. But I mean, you were talking about how you're like punk rock, black girl, like, and so which is going to be very different than somebody else who shares your racial identity and also someone who shares your punk rock. And so it
Yeah,
allows you to move in and out of different spaces while
yeah,
recognizing similarities you have, as long as we can get rid of that hierarchy, embrace the
yes.
individual while still holding the collective experiences that we have, which is way complex for folks to deal with. But I bet we can use art to figure out how to give people that frame. Here's the thing I think about introverts and extroverts. I think, like I said, there's so many groupings that we have in our society, and so many of them are hierarchical, that give you
Yeah.
greater access to participation, to resources, to representation, all this stuff. One of the things I've become very aware of is our society is built for extroverts and not for introverts.
Yes. I'm
And
an
so a
introvert, so I
lot
know that. I'm
yeah,
definitely
a
just
lot of
like,
times in our group settings, introverts don't get a chance to participate because us extroverts are just jumping in there and taking up all the space. And so as a
and we're like,
yeah,
excuse me, we're like,
yeah, yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah. So as a facilitator, I've really brought that into my equity lens. As I look at participation, I always want to make sure when I ask a question that we don't go right into discussion so that everyone has a chance to sort through their stuff. And I, at the beginning, ask for extroverts to step back and introverts to step forward, which is a challenge for both, right?
yeah. There's another question that says, how do you engage with art as a listener during this moment?
Yeah, I
And
love
could
that
that
one.
be the answer?
Yeah.
Could it be artistic engagement?
Oh, yes, yes,
Is
yes.
that
Sit
part
and
like
listen. Yeah, I love it. Yes, yeah, big ol' heart.
ah,
Listening, right? So listening in this moment in time and gathering everything together and then sharing what you make sense of, right? I mean, that is a beautiful thing for an artist to do who is an introvert is listen,
yeah,
absorb, ask questions, be present, and then give us some art that makes sense of what you have unpackaged because introverts hold an understanding of the group dynamic that extroverts don't because we're so busy extroverting all over everyone,
right, right.
that we're not listening and watching those dynamics as fully. And so listen and share and guide
I
us.
I have this we live in this world that is so extroverted. So I what I have seen is that there's this notion it's so nuanced, and like that's where I live. I love nuance, but like there's this notion that like silence is violence, and so like if you don't say or do anything, that like you're like not participating. But I think that there's a lot of this that can happen offline, the listening and the questioning and the reading and the learning. Like I feel like that is also important in this moment, but it's tricky because no one's seeing you do it. So it looks like you're doing nothing. It looks like you're being silent.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And then it's just like, well, who cares what everyone else thinks? And yet at the same time, we do need to make sure that we're raising our voices or bringing our bodies, to the
Right.
space to say, I am in support of this. And yeah, I mean, it's a tricky balance. And I think,
Yeah,
it happens a lot
very.
of time where like white people, when we go into conversations about race, don't want to just assert themselves so much. And so we just listen and sit back completely, but then we're just lurking and we're just like sucking all the information and not putting ourselves forward,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
finding that striking that balance and finding that groove is what the practice is, and
Hmm.
sometimes I'm going to step too much in, sometimes I'm going to step too far back, and as a
Oh,
big old pretty white dude with that, has a real nice voice, like I probably can err on the side of stepping real far back.
is like white people talking about racism like the hokey pokey? Is it like you have to like figure out like,
Winnie for the
yo,
the
is
hokey
the hokey
pokey may not be a bad practice to do. You hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
I feel like it's like the hokey pokey. You have to figure
Yeah,
out when you're out. And
yeah,
that's the thing, that's a privilege that I never have to deal
yeah,
with. Like,
yeah,
no one's ever going to be like, "Oh, Sharon, you're too loud when you're talking about race." I'm like, "Am I?"
yeah, yeah.
No, I'm
Right.
not. You're just uncomfortable. What does centering the most marginalized look like, and why is it important? For me, this question is all about humility. So, like, it's about humility, it's about intention, it's about ego, it's about just like, so let's shift away from race for just 1 second and shift into sexuality
Yeah.
or gender. Let's do that. Let's do gender. So if I have, so I identify as female. I have like, I go by she, her generally. Sometimes people mistaken me for a boy. That's fine. I love it. Um, some people don't know because I look androgynous, so they say they, them. That's fine. I love it. But like, if I wanted to center a trans person in an experience, I have to put my ego away and be vulnerable and say, hey, trans person, what do you need in this situation, in this piece, in this art, in this school, in this establishment? Like, what do you need? It has to be about them. And because I am a marginalized person, I have the practice of not being front and center.
Mhm.
So I feel like it's particularly hard for some white people not to center themselves because they're used to it. So when I'm so if so be if I was talking to a trans person, I have experience of not being centered. So I know what it's like to feel not centered in a situation. So I have the tools to really make sure that I feel like that trans person is being centered.
Mhm.
But white people not so much. So for me, if a white person wants to know how do they do that, um, in a racial way. It's just about like humility. It's this stuff. I mean, I feel like I'm a broken record. Humility and vulnerability, like it's just. But
Yeah.
it's like for me, it's like put that ego away. Assume you don't know. Um, Be humble, be vulnerable, ask questions, open your ears and your heart way the fuck up. Way, whoa, 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 because like I mean that's gonna be, like it might be hurtful. Like in the trans case, what if trans person says, females make me uncomfortable in this way, XYZ. I'm gonna be hurt. That has to be okay.
Yeah.
It has to be okay for me to hear things I don't want to hear, because the purpose is for them to feel comfortable and safe, because in the gender world they may not feel as safe.
Mhm.
In the race world it's no different. It's like we have to make sure ego's out the way. I have a giant ego. I have a tattoo right here learning about all my tattoos.
Yeah.
So it's weird.
Is it the
Okay.
the one closest to the wrist? Uh huh.
So the big circle represents what size my ego is, and the smallest circle represents what size my ego needs to be. And it's like a reminder that I need to fucking put that shit away, because I'm a Leo and I have a giant ego. I have a giant ego. And so I need to put that shit away. And so, like, that's for me, it's about like, it's not about you.
Yeah.
And it's really not about you.
Yeah.
It's not about, it has to be about the person.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that
I love that.
if like a I mean, not to take it back to colonialism, but have a feeling that if white people showed up in like, I don't know, like fucking Liberia, or like one of these West African countries, or India, or any of this fucking colonized place, and asked the people like, hey, what do you guys want? I feel like our world would look a little different than it does now.
Yes, yes, yes. If I could turn back time. After doing all this justice work and all this reproductive justice work, then I started getting into entertainment, and arts, and producing my own stuff. And I saw the power that could have. And then I started to bring the worlds together. So my first gig was being brought in to do this anti-stigma campaign. And like, that's all they had. They were like anti-stigma. And I was like, all right, stigma. Like, I don't even know for sure what that is, but let's look it up. And I looked it up, and the synonym was shame. And I had just started this journey, which kind of goes to one of these other questions, and something that we had talked about earlier of the internalized piece of this. I had started this journey as a queer person. um, when I was young, a seed of shame was planted in me, that something was wrong
Mhm,
with me, and that seed of shame
mhm.
grew, and its tendrils got into all kinds of spots within me. And I came to a
Yeah.
realization at this time, and it was like I was like mid 30s maybe, that seed of shame was not mine, and all the results of that were not mine. And so I went about a shame extraction process to try to
Yes.
find
Yes.
all the places
Oh.
in me. And at some point I pulled it out. I pulled the shame ball out of my heart chakra. I mean, we'll talk about that sometime. um but it
I'm
was
still there. I'm still in that
Are
process
you
as
in
far
that
as like,
process? I would,
oh,
if you need any companionship or any of that in that, I would love to be there with
oh
you.
yeah.
Yeah. So at the same time, I got the chance to run this campaign. And so what we ended up focusing on, because it was HIV dollars, it was at this public health agency, we ended up focusing on healthcare agencies to create environments where LGBTQIA plus individuals of color could actually find an affirming, loving, welcoming, and deeply so, healthcare environment. And
Yes.
so what we ended up doing was doing some storytelling, with LGBTQIA plus, individuals of color, to tell their own stories. We partnered them with filmmakers to tell their own stories about experiencing stigma in a healthcare setting, and then we
Ah,
showed those
yeah.
videos to the healthcare providers. Um,
Yes.
so that the individuals didn't have to keep coming and reliving their story, but also we didn't tell their stories on their behalf,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so I always framed it when I talked about it, if we are taking marginalized voices and we're bringing them to the center of our organizational transformation, of the transformation of our institution. The reason
Yeah.
that these voices are on the margins is because we didn't consider them when we set up our institutions and practices. So if we want to create environments where they are actually seen and heard and feel that, we need to take those voices and bring them to the center of that transformation journey. And so I think that's the thing, is when they live on the margins, the voices are not heard when we shape our things, because they're not right, we are. And so we step back, we bring those voices and experiences into the center, and we have them lead us in the transformation work that we're called to.
it it is really hard for me to say this because I don't want your white ego to get too big. But you are doing it. You're killing it, Jonny.
Thanks.
You really are.
Thanks.
I'm really just I'm like I'm proud to be a fellow human being of yours.
Ah,
Like that's really it's you're yeah, you're doing that shit, man.
thank
And I just see how, you know, um those folks at those fucking people at the Engler and their goddamn genius.
you. You're-
They knew that this was gonna be a good conversation
yeah.
because they knew you had to fucking practice. They knew.
Thanks. 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 I haven't always, right? I haven't always. So I was steeped in this work early on in social work. So my first, my graduate study was in racial justice, in these intergroup dialogues of like creating
No, no, no. What?
creating.
No. Okay. Your graduate work was in what, bitch?
It was in these intergroup dialogues where white people and people of color spent 10 weeks together creating a relationship and environment where we can pull our baggage out, open it up together, sort through it, learn on our own, learn from each other, and create new ways of being.
Wow! You're just now telling me this? He is just now telling me this.
Oops.
Wow.
So
So you've basically been like CrossFitting.
So I did, and then I went into reproductive justice work or reproductive rights work, and tried to integrate these practices in, and sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. I remember I had a boss who was like, "Oh, you don't need to worry about, I thought that a person of color needed to be hired for a position, and she was like, "Oh, well, you're gay, so you're fine, you can do it." And I was like, no, actually, it's not just about checking
That
a
takes a
box.
lot of humility. No, no,
Yeah,
no. And that takes a lot of humility because there's a
yeah,
lot of white people would be like, yeah, I can take it.
yeah, yeah.
I know. I can
Uh-uh,
relate. Blah, blah, blah.
uh-uh.
You did. So you've been practicing being a minority in your circles for a long time. You did reproductive rights work.
Yeah, and then reproductive justice. So then I fell in with these like amazing, especially women of color, who brought social justice together with reproductive rights, and really looked at it from a reproductive justice lens, which is like the right to access care is one piece of it, or the right to have care. But if you can't access it, then it doesn't mean anything, right? And so then they brought me back into the practice to say, this needs to be a part of everyday life. And then when I went into arts and entertainment, again, I lost that practice, and I, produced a couple of shows with mostly white people. And then I was like, wait a minute, I got called back to that practice. Right. And so, like, with all my privilege, I have a chance to fall out. And I want to set up systems where I don't have the chance to fall out. I want to create cultural environments where I cannot fall out, where I always have people around me doing this work, right? And so that if I'm not doing the work, it's out of the norm. That's my dream. That's my vision, at least for how we can be as a people.
So you want to talk about my fucking awakening? Want
Yeah,
to talk about my awakening right now?
yeah.
I am becoming aware in a very like, and I think this is where the mercy comes from.
Mm.
And I don't want to call it mercy because it makes it sound like I'm God and I'm extending mercy, but it's like, but I am becoming really aware of how white people do not talk about race. Like there's so many things. Do not talk about race. Don't have to talk about race.
Mm.
Don't know how to talk about race. are afraid of talking about race. It just like it keeps going.
Yeah.
It's just like any like it's just like it's not there. And I that's been my awakening
Yeah.
because I'm just like, oh wait, like my reality, I am so steeped, people talk about like especially when someone gets shot. We talk a lot, black people talk a lot about their bodies. And it's because what happens is visceral. We feel it in our like there's a like it's different for everybody because the black experience is not like monolithic. But for me, it is a chill in the spine. And or like a sadness that's in the gut. It's like and it's we talk about it because it's like it's physical. And so my black body is always thinking about my race. But it's become very aware to me how white people don't like it's non-existent for them. It's just like, hello, we are the world. Hi. It's just and I don't know what that's like. And that's for me, I'm just so aware of that. That is my awakening.
Yeah. Wow.
And that is why you are important
Yeah.
because a lot of white people,
No.
they just,
No. Yeah. Just yeah. Yeah. Well, and
hokey pokey.
I think you named something really powerful is that I think that so white people, and the sort of all these patriarchal and white supremacist, ways of being is very much about staying in the head.
And
And
let
it,
me clarify something because
yeah,
I don't want to make it sound there are varying degrees. Like I'm talking when I specifically talk about anti-racism work, there's many different angles. There's the people in the streets and the lawmakers who are talking about race at police levels
mhm,
and politics and mayors and systems. And I am not talking about those people. I don't, like I don't I don't know about anti-racism work in the police academy. Like I kind of that for me that's just not my that's not where I am because I think they might be lost. I'm talking about and maybe not. I'm talking about regular people like me and you,
yeah,
like people who walk and breathe and chill and like aren't in like we're in the system. But when I talk about feeling bad or feeling mercy
yeah, yeah.
for white people, I want to clarify that that mercy does not extend to law enforcement.
Okay, okay,
it,
all right,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
like I would love to have that deepness and that empathy for them, but like I think like after a certain point, I'm just like,
yeah,
you're going to kill me.
yeah,
So I don't know if I want to talk to you.
yeah,
I'm talking to all the other
yeah,
white people. I just want to
yeah,
clarify that
yeah, yeah.
because
No,
I
thank you.
there's an obstinateness to that. Like you're being obstinate when you kneel on a neck for 8 minutes and
Yeah,
46 seconds.
yeah, yeah,
There's like I'm just like there's something I think your heart is dead.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't think I want to talk to you.
yeah.
I'm talking to all the other people in the world who have working hearts.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 totally. Yeah, yeah. And that's why I'm really clear about this like state violence, right? Because that individual had the authority to be able to do that, and that needs to be taken away. There like it needs to be removed. And I will not stop this work until state violence against black bodies. And I mean, it started with indigenous folks when we first came here, and then with black folks, with the slavery, like these bodies have not been valued as people, right? They have not been held up at the same place. And that's that bias that we talked about, right? Somehow
Like,
your bodies are subservient to our like creative and commercial endeavors.
like what imagine a bizarro crazy world in which a slave owner went and was just like talked to like a black slave and was just like, okay, man to man. Do you really like this slavery shit? Like, what would that be like? Like, what would that conversation be
That's
like?
amazing. That would be
Like,
amazing.
they would be like,
Yeah.
no,
No.
I hate this.
Yeah.
I miss my
That's
family.
the real
I
changes I was
I
thinking about.
like, no, I hate this. Can we not? Can I get paid? Like, I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
imagine a world.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Imagine a
Imagine.
world. Yes. Visions, visions. These are the visions. I think well, and that got me to another vision when you were talking about, well, let me step for a minute. So white people don't think about it, and then when we get called out or we become aware of it, I think we feel that discomfort in our bodies and we don't know what to do with it, so we pop to our heads. And we
Yeah.
can, right? And so then we create that distance. And if we can stay in our bodies and sit with that, then we may come to the point where we cannot do anything but change the world, right? Again, what art can do.
Oh,
And then I got this
that's
vision,
the time
and
that's the first time I've ever thought about it.
and then I got this
It's
vision of a bunch of white people sitting back and spending that time in our bodies and sorting through this stuff and letting the Black, Indigenous, and people of color lead shit. Go ahead, take the wheel. We got work to do. We're going to figure this stuff out. Let us know how we show up to do the work. And I mean running institutions and governments and legislating and yeah, run our corporations, take over.
I've never thought this is oh my god, I love learning shit. I've never thought about the place of the white body in all of
Yeah.
this. I've never thought of it because I mean, I don't have to. I don't know
Because
how.
we don't.
I'm black.
Because we also
But
don't, right?
you
Yeah, we don't think about
I've
it.
never thought about it. So you like immediately intellectualize it.
Oh yeah. Oh, and we can
Oh.
unpack, and especially in liberal settings, you were talking real nice about Iowa City folk, and I appreciate that. But a lot of time, folk are just stuck in their heads, and they know how to say the words, and they know the frameworks, and they learn very quickly how to speak the thing so they can seem woke. And again, I
Ooh.
don't believe there's any woke; it's all awakening. But what does it
Yes,
feel like in
yes.
our body? What do our
Throw
bodies
that term in
do?
the trash, please. Can we throw that term in the trash
Yeah,
because it's
yeah,
terminal?
yeah.
It's
It's the
finite.
it's the
It's like I'm
perfected.
awake now. I'm done. It's just like no awakening.
Yes. I think in
Mm,
English grammar there's the perfective and the imperfective. And woke is the perfective
yes.
past tense, which is both problematic. It's past and it's perfect, not helpful. And awakening is an imperfect. And I love that imperfection. It is all about the imperfection, which is the humility that you
Oh,
were talking
he went
about.
grammar in this bitch.
I
He
got
went grammar.
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 That's because my brother is Dr. Stacks. He is an English professor in Denver. And so the power of words, honestly, also in this work, the power of words. We can do so much if we can change around our words because it starts to change around our thinking and understanding.
The body.
The body, but
The body.
the body.
How can white and non-black folks educate themselves?
Oh, yeah.
And when is it appropriate to ask black folks for guidance and education? I mean, I
Yeah.
makes me want to cry, man. Because like white people are so lost.
Yeah.
Like I just ah, and it's not a black person's job, but it's just like I don't think black people realize that white people are I mean, I talk a lot about like I give the analogy of like babies eating carrots. I feel like you if you give like a fucking like a 2-month old a carrot and you're like eat this and they're like I have slobber on my hands now. Like they can't eat that shit. And I'm not trying to make excuses for white people, but I'm just trying to be realistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, y'all are babies.
Yeah.
Like, y'all don't know how to do this shit.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
whereas like black people are like eating filet mignon.
Yeah.
They're like, they got salad with
Yeah. Yes.
like croutons
Yes.
and
All kinds of
like
spices.
like
Yeah.
toasted walnuts
Yeah.
whole. They're like chopped. They're whole, and we chewing it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We're we're Bugs Bunny up in this bitch. And like white people are like
Yeah.
they're like, they're like, and then so I imagine that a baby would take a fucking carrot and just slobber all over it and then become frustrated because like they're hungry and they can't eat this carrot, so then they cry, and then the fucking mom
Yeah.
puts a goddamn pacifier in, and
Yeah.
then they're done, and then they take
Yeah.
a nap.
Fall asleep, yep, and pooping in their sleep. Yeah, yeah. No, no,
And
no.
then
While the grown-ups gotta do the work. While the
that baby
grown-ups gotta
goes,
clean the house and the grown-ups gotta like go out and earn the income while the babies are just sleeping in their little sweet little cribs. No
and you
more.
just keep feeding carrots to the goddamn baby. That
Yeah,
baby will starve unless you give them like Gerber or Similac or whatever the fuck.
we got it. We
So
got
I'm
it.
just like,
Yeah. Yeah, we need to become self-sufficient.
I'm asking what I'm about to say is so unpopular because you're asking someone who feels, and that's just one form of fear. Like there's the police like spine multifidi gripping. For me, for other people it manifests elsewhere. There's like the continuous dials that I have. There's like the microaggressions. There's the hashtags. There's uh like incarceration. There's just so much to deal with when you're black.
Mhm.
And so for me to ask black people to be patient,
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I don't know if I can ask that of us.
No. Yeah.
You can ask it of me though.
Okay.
And I don't know why. I don't know why I feel like I'm in a place where I can really, where I want to give babies like their fucking split pea shit in a jar. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why I'm in that place.
But you are.
But I'd rather like, I'm personally, like ask me in like, I don't know how long this patience will
Yeah.
last. Ask me like in 3 months and I'd be like, oh fuck all y'all. But
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like right now, the way I see it, I'd rather overextend a little bit
Okay.
and give you some like split pea Gerber shit
Yeah.
and maybe like a fruit cup, and then maybe you can build to some spaghetti,
Yeah.
and then maybe to like some animal crackers.
Yeah.
I'd rather walk that process with you
Yeah.
than like have you invalidate my experience.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oof. Oof.
That's where I am.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's like two things that are like you got to do. You got to do, and it's been being done to you. But that's
I
generous.
know.
I think that's. I mean, I think that's so generous, and I think that you should always have the chance to step out at any point. Like at any point, you should be able to walk out and be like, "I'm done for now. I may come back. Who knows?" And I don't think anyone should be going after you, judging you. Should just be grateful for the time that you were willing to be patient. Because
I,
we can figure out how to do that. We can figure out how to get ourselves to solid food so we can sit at the grown-ups table with you.
yeah,
We
I,
can figure out how to do that.
I feel so maybe you do this. How did you educate yourself?
Well, I mean, I've had so many wonderful, patient, invitational folks along the way that have said, have been patient with me.
Every fucking white person that I ask that question to is just like, well, I just had people patient with me along
Well,
the
no, no,
way.
not just. I wanna honor those people along my path who were also generous and willing to let me be in those spaces and be awkward and maybe not yet be at the place that could be at the grown-ups table. And then I think that I think it's practice. It's just been practice, man. It's just been practice,
Yeah.
and reading. I mean, reading the stories of Black and trans and people of color and Indigenous folks and women and all the different experiences where I want to go ask you something. I know that there's stories out there I can go to first, and I can't ask for your help or your perspective or your feedback until I have relationship with you and you are
Okay,
getting
okay.
more from
No,
me than I'm
no, you
asking
said it.
you.
That's the meat of the chicken, the bean curd of the tofu. That is it. That is it. Maybe it's
What?
less about, maybe it's because we say educate yourself. That's maybe it's less about the education and more about the story. I
Yeah, yeah.
wonder, I don't know. Of course I can't speak for all black people, but I think if a black person was asked, "Can you educate me?" they would be like, "Bitch, I'm tired." But I wonder if
Oh,
if a white person said to a black person, "Can you tell me your story?"
wow. Huh.
Wonder if that would be
Would that be different?
met with a different reaction.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'd love to ask around and see what that, like what folks think about
Yeah,
that. I also wonder
I
if
always want to share my story, bitch.
yeah. Well, see
There
me.
were tons of white people stories.
Yeah.
I am to share my story. I want to share my story all the time.
Yeah.
I may not always want to educate, but
Yeah.
I love to share my story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's something real beautiful there. There's something really beautiful. Counterfeit medicine's amazing. There's a chance for folks to tell their stories and make into beautiful art, and they only have to
Yeah,
do it one time. There's something healing about them, but then that can be used in so many different ways to be able to educate folks who experience that privilege, right? And so I
that's
think,
how I
yes, I
that's
love it.
how I eventually overcame my homophobia.
Mm,
Like when I was 16 years old, I had a piano lesson teacher who I knew was there's something about him. And later on, I pieced together that he was gay. But something about him made me so uncomfortable.
yeah.
And I remember going to tell my dad, I was just like, I can't take piano lessons from this guy. And he was like, did he hurt you? Like, and I was just like, no, I just can't. And it was my homophobia. Just like he would touch, he would like, he had like massive gay hand and
Yeah,
he would just like touch
yeah,
the keyboard. And I was, and like my like religious Bible thumping fundamentalist body just curdle inside. I hated him. And I was just like, ugh, he's gross. And that was when I was 16 years old. And when
yeah,
I was my freshman year in college, I met someone and I loved them and they told me they were gay and they just started to share their stories.
wow,
And then 17 years later I came out.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So it's just
yeah,
it's insane to me. It's insane to me that like it took 17 years,
yeah,
but it began with a story. It
yeah.
began with a relationship.
And a relationship, right?
When I think about like all the like internalized homophobia
Mm,
that I've had, that I've just been like,
mm,
and I just think about like, I this body was this body. Let's talk about bodies. This body was disgusted
yeah,
by that man.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Disgusted.
yeah, yeah,
Jonny, like oh, it's there. Like I remember it like
mm,
just being like, ugh.
yeah,
And my poor parents, I couldn't even come out and say the word gay to them. I was just so disgusted by them that then when they asked me why I wanted to quit the lessons, I couldn't even
yeah,
tell them because I thought this man was gay.
yeah,
This body
yeah,
had that experience.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I feel, I think storytelling might be the way.
yeah, Yeah.
I met Joey, what's his name? And oh my God, he made me so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then like just like all the gay people I met after him, and like I met this guy named Bo, and I was in his band, and he was gay too. And I remember being 29 years old and telling him I don't think gay people should ever get married. And like
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh,
the fact that he didn't fucking throw me out of his goddamn house at that point,
yeah. Yeah. Right.
huh?
Yeah. 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 Talk about grace. Talk about
He
grace.
didn't
Yeah.
throw the house. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I told his gay ass face he couldn't get married.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
I just think about my journey, and then finally, like when finally just coming out, and like people would be like, Sharon, you don't want to date girls? And I'm like, oh, I'm scared of vaginas. And it's just like, Sharon, like you you were just scared and you didn't know how to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so, like, because I have that just very defined experience of just feeling the I remember that journey. And I think that's why I feel white people who just have this very long journey, 17 years
Yeah. Yeah.
and counting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I mean, that I'm still working on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
It's been 21 years.
because that
It's been
disgust is
21 years.
internal. Yeah, yeah. That disgust came from the disgust of yourself, which is the hardest thing to unravel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so I had to admit to myself that I was a little disgusted. I wasn't a little disgusted, I was very disgusted.
yeah,
So maybe there's something to your thing with Beatrice where it's 12 years an ally.
yeah,
Like maybe
yeah,
maybe there is just this expectation
yeah.
that it's gonna take a long ass fucking
It's
time.
gonna take a long time, and the journey is rich. The journey
Oh,
is
it is
rich and beautiful. The
beautiful.
things I have discovered about myself, it is painful. It is painful and delicious and luscious and confusing and frightening and isolating and connecting.
The way I changed is I was in a room
Yeah. Yeah.
with people
Yeah.
and I felt it in my body.
Yeah.
And that's how I changed. I changed because my eyeballs looked at a gay person. My eyeballs like fucking met somebody.
Yeah.
And that's when I start to change and challenge people.
Yeah, yeah, and their
And
particles got inside my nose, right? You know, I mean, I think the onset of social media has allowed us to disconnect our actions and our opinions from our bodies,
yes,
and it gives us a chance to say things that we would never say if we were in the room with another body. And we don't have to take social media away, but we have got to find a way to embody all of those opinions we put out there in the world.
put it back. Put
Yeah,
it back in the body.
yeah, yeah.
The lesson of this is the body. The body is important.
Yeah, my father, who was a Southern Baptist minister, so I knew when I came out was going to struggle. Not only because because accepting me and my wholeness was going to be a challenge to his belief system, but also to his leadership and his career. So I knew it was going to be a
Yeah.
struggle. And a few years into it, he asked me. He said, "You know, Jonathan." He said, everyone else has had a chance to share with you what they believe about your lifestyle. And I was wondering if I could do the same. And I thought for a minute, staying in a very grace filled space. And I was like, yes, I have two conditions though. Number one, you need to tell someone else first. So you hear what it sounds like before you say it to me. And if you still want to say it to me, I'll at least know that you have heard it. And number two, I get to tell you what I think of your lifestyle. And he never told me. He never followed that up with a conversation. But imagine if we challenged ourselves to do those two things before we put out the opinions that we have about what anyone else believes or thinks, and what that would do for us. Slow down our communication, deepen it,
Slow
and create peace.
down. Slow down.
Oh, yeah, slow it
Slow
down,
down.
slow it down, slow it down. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So let's have some slow language
Honestly,
conversations, my friend. Let's keep this going. I'm loving it. And if anytime we feel uncomfortable with doing it, we'll just pop up some puppets. We'll just bring in a
yeah.
little puppet. I think we should have some puppets available for white folk when they're just too nervous and they don't know how to say it. They can go behind the puppet stage, put a little puppet up and say it. That's fine. That's fine. But
They
then you
just
got to come back in the room afterwards.
they're like, Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I appreciate
Okay.
journeying with you. I appreciate journeying with you. I'm really excited about in this moment in time. And I do want you to know I will have your back when you need to walk out of the room, walk out of a conversation, be done with this for a while. I will make what I won't even make excuses. I will cover your back as you walk on out of there. Because I think it's very generous, your willingness to do this. And I want to make sure that also it's feeding you, on your journey, and at whatever point you feel like it's not feeding you. Yeah.